So the recording has started.
Good evening. Welcome to Branco Broadcast. My name is Bob Branco. We're very pleased to have with us Karen Orband. She's going to talk to us tonight about a subject that we've heard an awful lot about, especially in recent months. A lot of talk about non-24, what causes it, who gets it, what we should do about it. Karen's going to tell us all about it. Hi, Karen.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me, and thank you, Bob, for letting me come and have a talk with you guys in regards to non-24. I hope that it's informative and relatable to all of you. So, as Bob said towards the end, if you have any questions, feel free to write them down so you don't forget what they are, and ask away. Are we ready?
Go right ahead.
All right. Thank you. So, as we spoke, my name is Karen, and I am a registered nurse. I've been a nurse for about 18 years. I have a background working at some of the hospitals here in the city of Boston where I live, and I've been a surgical trauma nurse for about 18 years. I'm also a certified diabetes nurse educator. I did that for about 6 years. I also am a certified multiple sclerosis nurse educator. I did that for about 6 years. In the meantime, at the same time, I was working in the hospitals as a surgical trauma nurse. And now I'm doing education on circadian rhythm disorders, in particular, this particular circadian rhythm disorder known as non-24. And I don't know how many have heard of non-24. And so if you've heard of non-24, I want you to think now about what you've learned about it and just kind of jot down some notes to yourself as to what you've learned about it so that if anything I say today is a little different from what you thought or what you learned, you can ask about that if you have a question. So non-24 is a circadian rhythm disorder. And circadian rhythms are biological rhythms that happen naturally in the human body. And these biological rhythms are things that happen around the same time every day. So if we took down the word circadian and we broke it down to its Latin roots, the word circadian means circa, which is around, so something that goes around, and then the other part is dia, which means day. So circadian rhythm means rhythms that happen around one day. So one day being 24 hours in a day. And so when we're looking at non-24, we can think about something that isn't happening around one day. That's what non-24 would mean. So circadian rhythms are biological processes that happen every day around the same time about once a day. So if we all sit here and we think about our own bodies, think about what your body does once a day, every day around the same time, naturally. So something your body does once a day around the same time, naturally. And write that down. Just jot it down. So for me, it would be something like my body has a bowel movement around the same time every day, let's say 6 a.m. For somebody else, it may be I get hungry around the same time every day. So we just heard Molly barking at the sun guy because she kind of knew it was time for dinner. And then you may have somebody else that falls asleep around the same time every day or wakes up around the same time every day. And so I want you to think about your own body, and I want you to specifically think about whether or not your body falls asleep around the same time every day and wakes up around the same time every day. And the reason why we talk about the sleeping and waking is because that's a measurable circadian rhythm that typically, if it goes off cycle, or if you're not sleeping around the same time every day or waking up around the same time every day, you're going to notice it pretty quickly. You're going to feel that difference. But if your body doesn't have bowel movement around the same time every day, it may take a little bit before you actually start going, I'm really uncomfortable, I'm not having a bowel movement, I haven't had one in a couple of days, or I'm going too often. If your body gets hungry at random times throughout the day, that may be something that makes you feel happy, like I'm good, I'm glad, I'm happy, I'm eating a little bit more. But the sleep-wake cycle is something that we really notice, and we're going to kind of concentrate on that particular circadian rhythm when we're talking about non-24. But keeping in mind that circadian rhythms are a series or a bunch of different biological processes that the body does around the same time every single day. So the questions become, how does the body know when to do the same thing at the same time every single day? So when we're thinking about how the body functions, we have our different senses, and one of our senses are our eyes. So when we're thinking about our eyes, I want you to think about all the different things that the eyes do. So typically when I'm live and I'm talking with people about this, I'll ask the audience, well, what do the eyes do? And people will say to me, well, they see, and you see visual images, and that's true. You do see visual images, so you can see things. That these images pass through the eye, if you think of the eye as a window, and it travels through these pathways called rods and cones, and it takes your visual images to the back of the brain, where then the back of the brain will translate what you're seeing, and that's how you'll know what the image is. So we see visual images. We also see color with the eyes. And one of the other things that the eyes do is depth perception, as well as light perception, okay? Now, when we're talking about light perception, that's a different pathway. That is not the visual image pathway. Light perception is where the light enters the eye, so you can see the light with visual image, but perception is different from image. So you also have the perception where the light will pass through the eye, and it goes to the center. It goes through a different pathway called the retinal ganglion cells to the center of the brain that will then synchronize the body to a 24-hour day. And what I mean by that is every single one of us has our own natural body's clock. So there's the center of the brain that receives the light called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, okay? And the suprachiasmatic nucleus is like a little clock. We call it the master body clock. And that clock tells all of the other cells of the body that have a circadian rhythm, and that's all of the cells of the body, when to do what they're supposed to do. So you have the big master clock in the brain that's signaling to all the other clocks in the body. So the clock that tells the body to have a bowel movement, the clock that tells the body release the hunger hormones, the clock that tells the body to fall asleep at a certain time, the clock that tells the body to wake up at a certain time. It's in the brain. It's called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, and it's telling all those things when to do what it's supposed to do. That clock, for everybody on this call and for everybody that is around you, is slightly longer than 24 hours. That's what the research scientists have found. They were doing some studies on it. They were like, oh, my gosh, look at this. The human body clock is slightly longer than 24 hours. So when we started to talk, we started talking about circadian rhythm, circa dia being a whole one day, and one day is 24 hours long. But our clocks are 24-plus hours. So one person can have a clock that's 24 hours and 1 minute. Another person can have a clock that's 24 hours and 15 minutes. On average, what we found is that the average is 24 hours and 10 minutes. So if everybody's clock is a little bit longer than 24 hours, but a day on Earth is only 24 hours long, that means it's going to take our body to do something a little bit longer than the Earth. So our clocks are kind of like, and I don't know the age of the people on this call, and some of you may not remember this, but our clocks are kind of like the old watches that we used to have to wind up every day in order for it to give us an entire day of time. And sometimes it would run a little slower or it would stop working. So our clocks need to be reset every single day. And when it gets reset, that extra time that's on our clocks, on our body's clock, gets erased. So our body gets reset every day to match the Earth's 24-hour clock. Otherwise, if it doesn't get reset, our bodies will run to our 24-plus hour clock. And the primary way for us to reset our clock in our body is through light perception that passes through the eye, through that pathway that takes the light to that clock in the brain, and it resets it every single day. And when we don't have light perception, that clock doesn't get reset. And what we will see in a person whose clock does not get reset is that their body will drift to its own rhythm. And so how we found that out was we took some volunteers, and when I did this talk with Bob's group, I took Bob as my volunteer. So we took some volunteers. I didn't really take Bob for real. We just used him as a hypothetical. So we're going to take some hypotheticals in this group, and we're going to do what the real volunteers did. So we took some volunteers, and we put them in a dark space. We put them in a dark space where there was no light, where there was no light at all. It was completely dark. And we started to watch what their bodies did. So if you were somebody who falls asleep, let's say around 10 p.m. every day, and we put you in that dark space with these volunteers, what would happen is the very first night that you are in this dark space, you would fall asleep at 10 p.m. like you naturally do. Now, if we leave you there and 24 hours go by and we did not reset your clock with the Earth's primary way of resetting our body's clock, which is light, your body will fall asleep to its own natural clock. And let's say your natural clock is 24 hours and 15 minutes. So now I have you in this dark space for 24 hours. You normally fall asleep around 10, but we haven't reset your clock, which means now at 10:15, you're going to fall asleep. Now it's 48 hours, and we still haven't reset your clock. You're now going to fall asleep at 10:30. And now it's a third day. Again, we haven't reset your clock. You're going to fall asleep at 10:45. So every day that you're in this darkness, that we haven't reset your clock, you're going to fall asleep 15 minutes later, and you're going to wake up 15 minutes later. Until you get to a place where you're waking up, you're falling asleep at 10 a.m. in the morning, and then 10:15 in the morning, then 10:30 in the morning, and then eventually you'll cycle back to falling asleep at 10 p.m. And that cycle continues on and on and on until I take you out of the darkness and I have you have the light again pass through your eye to the center of the brain, and that extra time that you naturally have gets erased, and you suddenly become aligned to the 24-hour day-night cycle of the Earth again. So when a person has non-24, they don't have the ability to reset their body's clock, and they cycle through this time where they say to me, well, sometimes I fall asleep at this time, and then there are sometimes I fall asleep at that time. So there are times when you're falling asleep at the natural nighttime hours and waking up at the natural daytime hours, and then there are times when your body is telling you, no, I think I'm going to fall asleep at 2 in the morning now. And then you're falling asleep at 2 in the morning, and then all of a sudden then you're falling asleep maybe at 2:30, then it's 3 a.m., then it keeps moving forward until you're back to a regular day-night cycle. And this cycle continues on and on and on if you don't have light perception. So what's important to understand is that the people who are most at risk of having non-24, where their body is not falling asleep at the right time every day, are people who have no light perception, and those people are typically people who are totally blind. But it's not only people who are totally blind who get non-24. Those are just the highest risk. You can have low vision and have non-24. You can be completely visually image-sighted, where you see everything. You can see the lights. You can see the sun. You can see it all, but still have non-24. Now, when we started this talk, I said a dog can have non-24. And this is sometimes what happens when I have totally blind people who use a guide dog. What happens is they don't turn on the lights in the house a lot because they don't need the lights. So if the dog is always in the darkness, they're at higher risk of developing some kind of non-24 because they're not getting their clocks reset. every single day. So you want to make sure that your dog gets out in the light as often as possible so that they can reset the light. Now, people will say to me, well, what if I just stand in the sun and I try to absorb it? You can absorb vitamin D, but the way that we were made was for light to pass through our eyes to reset that timing system. And that's how we naturally reset it. So I hope that answers some questions. And if you want to, Bob, if you want to open the lines and just have people ask questions, they may have questions that will help answer or meet their needs.
Okay, we're going to start out with Lauren Casey. Lauren?
Okay, I'm unmuted. I don't really have a question for you, Karen. I just wanted to tell you that several years ago I got some information from Vanda about non-24, and I did go to Philadelphia. They had a car come pick me up, and I was going through some of the testing there, but I decided not to continue. So, because I really don't think I have non-24, so I just discontinued it. But we did have 1 year at the New Jersey Council. I'm the president now, but one year when someone else was president, we had the people from Vanda come and do a presentation to us. But that's all I wanted to say. And also that with my dog, I don't have a guide dog anymore. I have a retired guide dog, and I do put the lights on for him.
That's awesome. Lauren, tell me something. Since you got to hear the presentation a couple of different times now, or different ways, did you learn anything today that you thought maybe was a little different, or seemed like it made more sense or was more relatable than you had in the past? I'm just curious.
From what you said, yeah, I did have better understanding from,
Right,
what you
right.
told us.
Yeah. What made you think you may have had it before?
Well, I guess when I got the information, I was interested in it, and there are times that I have trouble getting to sleep or whatever. I think that's just me personally being stressed out or whatever, and then I would have insomnia. I don't really think it's non-24. So, and I didn't want to pursue any more of the testing, and I didn't want to take the medication, get involved with taking the medication.
Sure. And that's the thing, and I'm glad you brought that up, Lauren, so thank you for that, is that, when we're talking about non-24, there's a couple of things to remember. There's a lot of different reasons for people to have sleep problems, and non-24 is just one that a lot of physicians don't know about. So that's why we're out there educating on it, because it's different from the ones they do know. And the other ones that they do know, like, for example, sleep apnea and things like that, that's easier for them to diagnose and to rule out because they have a test they can do. But with non-24, there's no test. There's just we go, okay, the person has some kind of vision loss, and then we listen to their history of their sleep pattern, and that's how we diagnose it. Now, the treatments are completely different. That being said, if you are somebody, and this is really important to understand, if you are somebody that potentially could have non-24. So I did a presentation in New York City at the Baruch College over the fall, or I was talking with someone, I can't remember when, I think it was over the spring. And the lady says to me, I have non-24, I'm totally blind, I have non-24, and I know I have non-24. But, I'm retired and I don't work, and I just go to sleep whenever my body tells me to go to sleep, and I wake up whenever my body tells me to wake up. Why would I want to do treatment, she says. And I said to her, you wouldn't. So I think that's important also. If you are somebody that can follow the rhythm of your body, meaning if your body's telling you to fall asleep, fall asleep. If your body's telling you to wake up, wake up. If you're somebody that has that ability, has that I call it luxury, to be able to follow your body's rhythm, then do it. And you wouldn't need to be treated. Now, what ends up happening is people will what we call superimpose life on top of it. So what I mean by that is they will force themselves to stay awake. so that they can be awake during the daytime hours and asleep during the nighttime hours. And then they don't realize that they have non-24 because they're forcing themselves to stay awake, but they don't feel at their best. So if we all think about when we feel at our best, it's usually after you've had a certain amount of sleep. So the reason why providers and physicians and scientists are always saying get 6 to 9 hours of sleep is during that time our body is healing. It's sleeping, it's resting, and it's healing. And if you're going against the drive of your body, for example, if your body is releasing the sleep hormone and you're trying to force yourself to stay awake because you are working or you're trying to go to school or you have a young family and you're raising your family or you just want to be awake during the day and asleep at night, but your body is telling you to do the opposite, you are now superimposing life on top of what your body's rhythm is, and you're forcing yourself to go against the drive of your body. And when we do that, we do things like drink a lot of coffee to try to stay awake, or use Red Bull or things like that to try to stay awake, or eat to try to stay awake. You know, I think about when I worked the night shift as a nurse in the hospital, and I would force myself to stay awake at night, and I had to force myself to sleep during the day. I felt miserable all the time, and I put on a lot of weight, and I would eat, and I would do things to try to force myself to stay awake, and did not feel my best. And as a matter of fact, I was grumpy all the time as well. I wasn't the nicest nurse when I worked on the floor. I was grumpy because I wasn't nice to my patients, but grumpy to my colleagues because I was so tired all the time. So it's really thinking about, is this me? Am I grumpy? Am I feeling not my best? And am I not having a lot of energy? Am I forcing myself to stay awake by drinking coffee and doing all these things? And if I've talked to my doctor about this and they have tried to treat me and nothing has worked, maybe I need to have a different conversation. So thank you, Lauren, for that information. Maybe I'll get to meet you sometime in New Jersey now that that's going to be my area of coverage. So who's next on your list?
Joni.
Hi, Karen.
Hi.
Hi. Well, I always had problems. I am totally blind. I had light perception in one eye until I had it removed when I was 12. But I always had problems. I always wanted to be up at night and and I'd fall asleep in my classes when I was a kid, and all this. It was very difficult for me to stay awake in the daytime. And yet at night I was, a real night owl. And so I had to be up with him at night, and that was fine. I never minded 2 o'clock feedings, although it was so exhausting. But I wanted to just sleep during the day, and so I went through my life like that. And then I heard about non-24, and I said, I think I have this. So I had heard the same speech that Lauren did, and I heard that they were doing studies on it, and then they said they would pay you, and that was very interesting to me, as it would be to everybody. And but I applied, and they said I didn't fit the criteria. Thank you. So then lately, about a year, maybe 2 years ago, I guess, I was having problems, and I went to a sleep doctor, and he said that we did the test and everything. He said I've had sleep apnea. Okay. So I said to him, I think I've non-24 too, and he knew about it. He's a very, very bright guy. And he said, under no circumstances do I want you to take the medicine for non-24. In fact, my primary care doctor also knew they both said, don't take them because in an older person, they can cause very bad side effects like problems with your liver and all the stuff. And my sleep doctor put me on melatonin, and that really has helped me. It's not harmful, and I sleep pretty well at night, but I find that I want to take a nap and still want to take a nap in the afternoon. And he said that's okay. I'm not exactly following all the I don't always wear my mask when I'm supposed to for my sleep apnea, but I know that I'm sure that I had non-24 most of my life because I always had sleep problems.
Well, it's entirely possible. So just to give you a little bit of a back, well, I don't know your medical history. I can tell you that when we're looking at non-24, it's cyclical. And so if it's something, if what you're doing is helping you and you're getting to a place where you're sleeping a little bit better than you were before, then you keep doing what you're doing. And having a nap in the middle of the day, that's not abnormal. Everybody has a moment in the middle of the day, whether you're sighted or you're not sighted, that you have a little blip where your natural endogenous sleep hormone, which is melatonin, will get released. And you'll be like, I just feel like I need to take a nap. And so that person will take like a 15, 20, 30-minute nap, and then they're awake, and then they're good. Now, where it becomes a problem is if your body is saying to you, you have a blip, I want to fall asleep in the middle of the day, and then all of a sudden you're sleeping for 8 hours. So your body says, it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and I'm going to sleep, and you're not waking up again until 10 p.m. That's not a blip. That's a circadian rhythm. I'm just going to sleep at 2 p.m. So it's really looking at your body and how it's responding to whatever it is that your physician or your provider, however they're treating it. And if your body is responding well, that's great. If your body is not responding well, revisit conversations with them. A lot of times providers get nervous about new therapies or therapies that they perceive as expensive. So it's really going and having a conversation with them, because what they perceive as expensive is not really going to cost much to the patient.
We have a lot of people to get to, so I want to move this right along if that's all right. Marcy from West Rock.
Hi, I'm here. I was having trouble unmuting for some reason. I also have sleep apnea, and I'm wondering between sleep apnea, 24, and also where doctors put you on medication for other things like if you have nerve disorder or if you have a seizure disorder. When you take all these drugs and you put all these things together, I mean, I believe one thing fights the other. And yeah. And I also believe that sleep apnea, when they say, oh, you have non-24 as well, I mean, well, hello, I do everything I'm supposed to do. But I'm the kind of person that can fall asleep with their eyes open. I did this all the time in school. And then the teacher will call on me, and I know the answer, even though I was asleep.
Yeah, I went through that there.
Yeah.
So, Mary, what's your question? Marcy, what's your question, dear?
I'm wondering if sleep apnea has a form with it. What?
No,
do they go hand in hand?
No, sleep apnea is a completely different sleep disorder where you have an obstruction in your sleep and you kind of snore and you stop breathing. It's an obstruction. So that's a physical problem in the back of in your body. With non-24, it's a lack of light passing through your eye and synchronizing your body to a 24-hour day. So two different things. So just really quickly, I had a lady that I met at a presentation who had heard a different presentation, and she was on therapy, and she had a seizure disorder, and she had sleep apnea, and she had non-24. So she had to take medication for her non-24. She had to do her CPAP, and she had anti-seizure medicine. But her neurologist said to her, I'm so glad that you took care of your non-24 because it's easier for me to manage your seizures now, because sleeping is important. It's an important part. And when people don't sleep, sometimes it can make their seizure disorders a little more active. So everybody's a little different, but that was...
Yeah, I'm a little lucky because I have a seizure disorder, but I don't take any medication anymore because there's no activity.
Sure, that's a wonderful thing. So the answer to your question is no, sleep apnea is completely separate from non-24. Non-24 is where the body doesn't align to a 24-hour day and the person's body just takes over by itself, and then they sleep whenever. And if you have the ability to just sleep whenever your body tells you to sleep, Marcy, go to sleep whenever your body tells you to sleep.
Huh. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Stephen.
Hi, Karen. I want to just say that I think being a RN and all the experience you had is wonderful. My cousin in Maine is a day surgery nurse, so I really respect the field of medicine. My issues were more with the Vanda Pharmaceuticals. My experience was they were calling me a lot. I went to the Perkins thing, like I said, about, I guess it was a year or two, and it was, because they said people with low vision can have non-24, so I wanted to get the information, and I wasn't really thinking about it, and I told them who my doctor was because they were taking all this information. And I had a problem with them showing up at my doctor's office on the day of my appointment unannounced. They left before I left the appointment. But my other issue was I've been reading, seeing things, Full Measure was talking about how the drug companies skew their data, and my last question really was, if there's no test for it, how do you know you have it? And my final thing is, I've seen a lot, and when you age, my sister's like, when you get older, you have trouble sleeping. I haven't cited any studies, but I know a lot of people that are older have trouble sleeping. And my last question was, I don't know if you can speak to this, but why is the non-24 drug an orphan drug? Because it sounds to me like if everyone's having trouble sleeping and there's not a test for non-24, you're going to be doing all right.
That's a lot of questions. So thank you so much, first of all. And I'm sorry to hear about that with Vanda. I've heard that before, and it's really annoying. I've brought that feedback to the company. I can tell you that. So the reason why there's no test for it is because there's no way to test for what is your particular normal clock. But there is a test. The test is incredibly expensive. So the way that they tested it in the studies, and studies generally for any pharmaceutical company are actually done by physicians, and the pharmaceutical company just gives them the drug and gives them the money. So what happens is that they would have to put you in the hospital to test for non-24. They would have to put you in the hospital for about a week, and they would have to measure all of your urine throughout the entire time you're in the hospital and check your melatonin levels as you excrete it. And so no doctor is going to get coverage from an insurance company.
Yeah.
They haven't put this guy in the hospital for a week, and your nurses are and doctors are going to just collect their urine for a week and send it off to the lab and test it. It's ungodly expensive. So that's kind of part of the reason. So what the FDA said was the way to diagnose it is through, one, if the person has visual impairment, and two, kind of like the history. So it would be you and your doctor sitting down and talking about where you are as far as your sleep cycle. As for your next question, which is as people get older, they have problems sleeping, kind of yes and kind of no. Typically, people, when they get older, sleep more. So they'll sleep, 10, 12 hours a night versus 6 to 9.
My mother does. That's true.
Right. They don't sleep less. However, there's one thing that does happen as we get older to a lot of people, and that's they start losing vision. And as people age and they lose their vision, then you start seeing sleep problems versus sleeping more, if that makes sense. And then the last one, orphan drug. Orphan drug basically is just for a very small population of people. Non-24 is not very prevalent. It's a really, really small population of people that have it. It's not as prevalent as people think. So when you hear the words orphan drug or ultra-orphan drug, it's for a very small population. Ultra-orphan is even smaller population. I was just in talks with another company that treats for an ultra-orphan drug disease, and that is even smaller. So it just means it's a small population. Not a lot of people have non-24.
Then why do we see all these ads on the major networks if it's such a low population?
That's the reason why. So the company is saying it's a really low population. There's no specialist that treats it. So how are people going to know if they have it if they don't hear and go, what's this non-24? Let me learn a little bit about it.
And I have one last, I'm sorry, I had one last little thing.
Go ahead.
A lot of people have glaucoma. I have never seen ads for glaucoma drops on TV, and I think a lot more people probably have that than non-24, even though they don't know about the testing.
Right. So if you go into your ophthalmologist, they're going to know what glaucoma is because they see it every day. But if you go to your ophthalmologist, I just went to mine today, and they have no idea what non-24 is because it's a small population. So the ad campaign is basically to get the word out, to get people to learn about it because people don't know about it. But you don't really need to. And remember, non-24 is not a drug. It's an actual disorder. The drug is completely different. When you see ads on TV for things that like drugs that you see every day, that's different from, hey, this is a disorder you may not know about, and we want you to learn about it. Even doctors will say, I never even heard of non-24. And then you tell them, this is what it is when you describe, and they're like, oh, yeah, we learned about that in med school, but that was like 2 seconds. Well, doctors didn't care about something they couldn't treat before. And up until about 3 years ago, they couldn't treat non-24.
Okay, I got to move along. We have Trish. Trish? From Michigan.
Yep, I just had to unmute myself here. I don't have any questions. I just want to say that I know I don't have it after listening to your presentation, and I thank you very much for the information. I am blind in my left eye, and my right eye, I have about 2% vision left with light perception, and it's just good old-fashioned insomnia. So
yeah. Thank you, Trish.
All right. We move on to Betsy.
Hi there.
Hi.
I'm really glad you're on the show tonight. It's timely because I'm having just an incredibly difficult time dealing with it. I've had it all my life, but I've been resistant to trying the drugs or anything. But now I'm getting to the point where I just can hardly function. So where is the best place to go for information? So, because I know I'm going to have to point my doctor in some direction to learn, teach him about it as well.
You know what, Betsy, what I'm going to do, if you can, I'm going to give you my information, my number, and you can call me, and I'll give you that information. So if you have availability to write it down or to to take it, I'll
Karen, you can give it out to everybody at the end of the program.
Okay, so that's what I'll do. So we'll talk offline about it, Betsy, because then, I can tell you kind of how the process works and also find out from you a little bit more information so I can go, yes, let's work with you, or, sister, you got a whole different issue. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, sure. Can I go ahead and get the number now because I may have to go in a minute? Is that okay, Bob?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Ready? It's 202.
Okay.
699.
Okay.
1324.
1324. Okay. Well, thank you so much, and I'm glad you mentioned. I'm glad you mentioned leaving the lights on for your pets because that's one of those things I'd always kind of thought about, but it was cool to hear somebody actually say it.
Yeah.
All right.
Like, hey, turn the light on.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Thanks much.
Okay. Next on the list we have Dawn.
Dawn.
Yes. Hi, Bob, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
I can hear you. Go right ahead with your question.
Okay, thanks. Hi, Karen.
Hi, Don.
I have a two-part question, very briefly. Were you saying that sighted people can also get this disorder?
Correct. So you can have someone who had a head trauma or some kind of issue that created a disruption in how their eyes perceive light. So I'll tell you a really quick story. I had to go down to Baltimore, Maryland to do a presentation for an organization. And the person that organized the presentation says, you're about 3 hours early. Can you go to this shopping plaza and just hang out there until I'm ready to pick you up? So I go, yeah, I know. So I go to the shopping plaza, and I see there's a nail salon. I go, typical woman form. I'm going to go get my nails done. So I walk in. I'm getting my nails done. There's a lady sitting next to me. We start chit-chatting. And I didn't tell her why I was there or who I was. I was just chit-chatting. We were chit-chatting about the weather, and I just tell her where I came from, that I had come from Boston. It was really, really cold, and it was nice and warm down there. And so we proceed to talk, and, she tells me she was a teacher. I told her I had a son who's 11. I asked her if she had children. She said she had a 24-year-old that was still living in the house. And I said, well, those millennials, they never leave. And she said he lived in the basement. And I said, when I said, I know about those millennials that never leave the house, she said to me, well, my son has a disability. I said, well, what's his disability? And she says to me, he has a circadian rhythm disorder known as non-24. I almost fell out of the chair. And I said to her, really? And I said, well, is he blind? She says, no. And I said, does he have low vision? She says, no. And then she says, why are you asking me all these questions? You ask as if you know. And I said, well, I kind of do know because this is what I do for work. And then I told her who I was and what I did. And she just stared at me like I was, Jesus coming down from heaven or something. I don't know. And she's Jewish, so clearly she, so she says, so I said, he's not blind. He doesn't have low vision. He has complete visual. He's completely sighted. She says, yeah. And I go, does he turn on the lights in the basement or is it dark down there? And she says, no, there's lights. And he comes upstairs and he goes outside. I said, okay, so he has light exposure. I said, tell me more about your son. And she says, well, my son was adopted. And when he was in the womb, his mother and father were both drug addicts. And somewhere along the line, the doctors think that the pathway did not develop and he has no light perception, even though he can see the light. Now, Don, the opposite of that is you can have somebody who's totally blind. They can't see image, but they do have light perception.
Right. Now, my two-part question, just very briefly, because there are other people who want to ask questions. If many blind people don't have non-24, and a few sighted people have it, who is to know that this is a real disorder? Because there's a million causes of insomnia and other sleep disorders.
You're definitely right about that. There's a million causes. But non-24 is not new. It's not new. They've known about circadian rhythms since the 1800s.
Oh, yeah.
And non-24 used to be called free running syndrome. So you can look that up, free running syndrome.
I will.
But what they didn't know before was where the clock was, that it was longer than 24 hours. They kind of knew, but they didn't know 100%. And they didn't invest as much time and effort into it because there was no treatment. So doctors have 3 tools in their toolbox. They can give you a medication, they can do absolutely nothing, or they can perform surgery to fix your problem. If there's no tool in their toolbox, if they don't have a medicine to fix it, and they don't have a surgical intervention to fix it, they're not going to do anything. They're not going to give much time to it. Up until 3 years ago, they couldn't do anything. So now they're like, oh, now we can actually do something. Now we have a tool. Let's learn more about it. And that's the whole goal here. But it's not a disorder that's not real. It's not a disorder that hasn't been known about. It's a disorder that there was nothing we could do about before, and we didn't know as much, and we're learning more and more and more.
Very good. You want to say one more, Don? I got several other people. You want to say another question?
Very briefly, Bob.
Okay, go right ahead.
A lot of blind people don't have it. So,
yes.
But would you say they're very lucky, or?
No, they just have light perception. They actually didn't lose their light perception. So that it's 30%.
I mean totally blind people, totally blind.
Of the totally blind, 30% do not have non-24. 70% do.
There goes your orphan drug category.
Oh.
Exactly, yeah. So you have a small population of totally blind, and of that totally blind, only 70% have it.
Okay.
All right, Karen, you're next. Karen, you're next.
Yes, I'm
Karen,
sorry
one more
for taking
chance.
a couple of minutes. I'm sorry for taking a couple of minutes, but I do have a couple of questions. My first question is, do you think you can treat non-24 with some lifestyle changes? And the reason I ask this is that I'm not sure whether I have it or not, but I found a few years ago I take melatonin at night and I take magnesium, and I found that going to bed at a certain time and trying to get up at a certain time, I didn't always succeed doing it, but I found that I felt a lot, slept better. And I also found that stop drinking coffee at a certain hour helped.
So what were your problems before you were doing
My
that?
problems were that I was working for a magazine and I was writing for it. And on the night that I wrote my article, and even other times, I would stay up like later into the night and, work, and then I'd go to sleep. And I found that I would sleep when I felt tired, if it was 11 o'clock or 2 o'clock, and then sleep into the day, and half my day would be gone. So I thought, gee, I better do something about this. So I tried this, and it seems to work.
So a couple things. I love that you mentioned that.
I am totally blind.
Okay. So a couple things. One is that you didn't quite do it 100% naturally, right? Because you took supplements. You took melatonin and magnesium.
Yeah.
The other thing is there is also sleep hygiene. So whether or not you have non-24 or any other sleep disorder, and remember, this is a circadian rhythm disorder. So there's sleep disorders like sleep apnea and insomnia, and then there's a circadian rhythm disorder, which is different from sleep disorders. But we focus on sleep. So when we're talking about that, when we're talking about sleep, whether you are completely sighted or not sighted, it's irrelevant. Everybody needs to maintain what we call sleep hygiene. Sleep hygiene are the things that you do to prepare yourself when it's time to go to sleep, like put on your pajamas or maybe not put on your pajamas, floss and brush your teeth and wash your face or take a shower or whatever the case may be, turn off the lights, not read a book, those things to try to make sure that your body is ready for the rest that it's going to need and take. And that's really, really important. So to answer your question, the natural way that the body was designed to align its circadian rhythm clock to the 24-hour day was really through light passing through the eye. And that perception, not visual image, but the perception going to that clock and synchronizing your body. Now, you can superimpose life on top of that if you're not synchronized, meaning you can set an alarm clock to make yourself wake up, even though your body's not ready to do it. You can drink coffee and things like that to keep yourself awake. So on the night that you were writing your magazine, you were probably doing things to try to keep yourself awake so you could stay focused on writing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So you were going against what your body wanted you to naturally do to try to make yourself stay awake, which wasn't making you feel very good. It was making you feel not so great, and it was disturbing everything else in your body. And so
for the one day, it's sometimes I didn't feel as great, but it's I did it.
But imagine people who have to do that every day. That becomes a problem, right? So that's the thing that we need to remember is you can superimpose life and force yourself to do these things. And that's where it starts to become an issue with all of the circadian rhythms. But yes, sleep hygiene is important for everybody. So even if a person were to get treatment for non-24, I would still say to them, you still have to maintain a sleep hygiene routine. just like kids do. You tell them to brush their teeth at a certain time. You still have to do that every single day. So I'm glad that your routine is working for you because I want what works best for you.
Okay, Tad. Are you still there, Tad from Tampa?
Tampa. Maybe he had a lightning storm take him out.
All right, we're going to move on to Peter. Peter from San Antonio.
I think Tad's ready. Tad?
Hi, Karen. How you doing tonight?
Is this Peter or Tad?
This is Peter from San Antonio.
San Antonio. Hi, Peter.
Hi. How you doing?
Good.
First, I have a couple questions for you, but first I got a comment when you were saying earlier that you and I are always the nicest nurse sometimes.
No.
And I'm sitting here thinking, I wonder if her last name is Ratchet.
It could be. It depends on the day.
But
I used to introduce myself like that sometimes. I'm Nurse Ratchet. What do you want?
One lobotomy coming up. No. Anyway, I got a couple. One is a concern. The other is a question I'm just thinking about. You were saying that the body clock is set primarily through the reception of light. Well, that's probably true as long as you're in a place where you can get exposure to light. Yeah, but this planet has creatures. There's certain species of fish that live in caves, and there's a part of the ocean which is referred to as the dark zone. And creatures that live down there, they don't see the light of day, and yet obviously these animals have found, obviously they have run a body clock of some kind, and that would tell me that if they cannot reset their body clocks due to via light perception, they must have adapted some other way to keep their circadian rhythm in sync. And I'm just wondering if you've done any type of tests with humans to try to determine if there are other environmental cues that blind people or somebody who rarely, if ever, gets exposure to light of any kind uses to keep their circadian rhythm in sync.
I'm glad you asked that question. And the study was that they put volunteers that were sighted into a dark cave is what they did. And they started to watch what their bodies did. So those eels, for example, that are dark in the dark space, way, way, way down in the deep sea or whatever animal it is, their bodies are probably going to do exactly what the bodies of the people that were in the caves did. Or if you have ever seen a pregnant woman or spoken with a pregnant woman and they have a baby in their dark womb, the baby is not in sync with the earth. The baby just falls asleep whenever it wants to sleep and wakes up whenever it wants to wake up. And typically it's awake at night when we're trying to sleep and it's picking up to keep us awake. So just like the people in the dark cave, what you see is a species that are not, and they did do these studies, species that are not exposed to light don't need to be synchronized with the day-night cycle. Their body's clock just does whenever it wants to do whatever it wants to do. So my guess would be that those species or animals in the sea are just falling asleep whenever their body wants to fall asleep and waking up and eating whenever their body wants to wake up and eat because that's what their body tells them to do, kind of like babies inside the womb. No different from that, no different from the humans that were in the cave.
Okay. You mentioned earlier too that that non-24 may be suspected if a person doesn't have other sleep disorders. And by the way, I do have sleep apnea, and it took a very tragic situation back in 2001 to finally put me on the path to getting it diagnosed. And one of the big concerns that I have had with all of this is the fact that you mentioned earlier that that non-24 is something that cannot be that cannot be tested for, like sleep apnea. But I guess what's kind of worried me about all this, and as well as I do and other people, that people's sleeping habits are responsible for a lot of mishaps in this world.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Illness, injury, death,
correct.
You name it.
Correct.
And unfortunately, I found myself in a difficult situation in Philadelphia in 2001, and when people are affected and force themselves to stay awake and stuff, it impairs their sense of judgment. And I'll just put it this way and say that they make decisions that if they had a full night's sleep or in a sound state of mind, they would have dealt with the situation in question differently. And so what has always concerned me about is and while it's not possible to test for non-24, it is possible to test for sleep apnea and a lot of these other conditions. And by the way, I do use a CPAP. Plus, we also, both my wife and I, we use we use an all-natural product at night, and it's called Sleep Health. Mm-hmm. And we found that to be very effective. And if Bob could send me your email and stuff, I can send you information about it. But it has worked for us, and I do have some vision, and Mary is totally blind. But to get back to this, okay, someone is treated for non-24, but they tend to have, but they still have irregular sleeping habits and exhibit impaired judgment. I guess what I'm just wondering is what type of recommendations do you give, or what would be the best advice for someone who who gets treated for the non-24, but then other problems are still happening. They're still having sleep issues, and I guess what the thing is we don't want. I mean, it's good that this is a condition that is people being educated to it, and it sounds like you're doing a really great job. But on the other hand, we don't want to create a situation where doctors and professionals, whatever, they say, "Oh, you're totally blind. You've got non-24," and then they still have sleep habits, and then as I said before, that affects judgment, and many bad things have happened because of that have been traced back to sleep disorders. And I guess we want people, if people feel that this medication helps them and everything is great, but we don't want people to be put in a situation where other possible causes are overlooked. What would you recommend? We don't want that to happen.
I completely agree. So keeping in mind that this talk is about non-24 and not necessarily about treatment. So treatment should be something that needs to be decided between you and your physician. And
right.
So what we want to do is just kind of say, all right, you know about sleep apnea, you know about insomnia, but did you know about non-24? And if you've been treated for sleep apnea and you've been treated for insomnia and you're not seeing results, maybe you need to talk with your doctor about non-24. Now, that doesn't mean, and I think it was one of the ladies early on, that you would even be eligible.
I was just just talking about the opposite scenario where somebody knows about non-24.
No, I don't want to do anything about it. Sure. That's what you're saying. You're saying if you have it, do something.
No, the person knows about non-24, but they don't know anything about other possible sleep disorders.
Oh, sure. That's probably less likely the case, to be honest with you, because the other sleep disorders are more prevalent, more common. So it's more likely the case that they know about sleep apnea, that they know about insomnia. Predominantly what I hear is people know about all of those, but they don't know about non-24 at all. So typically when a person says, I have trouble sleeping, to their doctor, the first thing that the doctor is going to say is, well, you probably have insomnia. Try, going to sleep at the same time every day. Try these lifestyle changes first. If they don't work, then let's do a sleep study and see what the sleep study shows. And normally what you see is what's most prevalent, and that's sleep apnea. Sleep apnea is easy for doctors to treat. They give you a machine, you get treated, you're good. I
underwent 2 sleep studies. I was finally in 2002. I mentioned that I was having trouble sleeping to the neurologist I had at the time, and he referred me in for a sleep study. I was getting up and urinating quite a bit at night, and keep in mind this was after the damage was done in 2001. And anyway, I went in, had the sleep study the first night. It was rough. I was getting up every so often, and finally, after the end of the first night, the technician came in and said, "Why don't you get dressed?" So he get all the wires and stuff off of me, and he said, "I want you to get dressed and come out to the station. I need to talk to you." And so I got dressed, and he said, and he was matter of fact said, "I want you back here by 9:00 this evening. You have sleep."
We still have some people. I just want to move this along a little bit. Peter, does Mary want to say something?
I was just going to finish up. So anyway, I went back that evening, and he put me on the CPAP, and that's what it was. And life has been a lot better since. Thank you very much.
Does Mary want to speak?
I think he covered it for the most part. I guess all I would have to say is that sometimes, I think in my case, I'm taking Losartan for my blood pressure, and that is one of the side effects. I guess one of the side effects is insomnia.
Really?
That's all.
Yeah.
Okay. Tad, are you still out there? Tad from Tampa.
Yeah. Can you hear me at all?
Yes.
Yes, go right ahead.
Yeah, there are some jobs like the military that they insist on staying. They make you stay awake whenever you want to. All right, 2 o'clock, I can get out of bed, whatever.
There you go.
That's 2 or 3 in the morning, and you don't have any choice.
Right. But how do you feel when that happens? You feel good? You feel healthy? You feel focused? You feel at your best, most energetic? Or scared to death because they're yelling at you?
I feel like whooping out my friend and being on my backside. No,
yeah.
I'm totally fine.
Well, sleep deprivation or keeping somebody up is a form of torture for a reason. It does take its toll on the human body when you're forcing yourself to stay awake. So it's
no. It's your military sergeants that are forcing you to stay awake.
That's right. But you're trying
when they're giving you boot camp and basic.
Right, and you're afraid.
They do that in medical school too.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
All right. Okay. We've got Cleora.
Hello there. Well,
Do you have a question,
Hi,
Cleora?
How are you?
Well, I'm fine. I've been making little lists here as I've listened to other people.
Sure.
One thing. Now, you said that, it's light perception, and you said that, somebody else said something to kind of clarify this a little bit. Does it have to be sunlight or just any kind of light?
Oh, that's a very good question. Thank you for asking me that. What they found in the studies was it could be any kind of light. It could be artificial light as well. That's why I said keep the light on for your dogs. But keeping in mind, if we go to the natural state of the human being or any animal, really, because most animals have a circadian rhythm, and before there was artificial light, so before there was electricity, the way the body was designed to respond to the earth was through sunlight. So sunlight is the natural light that the body is naturally supposed to respond to, and artificial light has become part of our world, so our body responds to that as well.
So now, does it matter when the light, I've heard off and on different things about, the non-24, and what I had heard was, like in the morning when you get up, you see the sun, and that resets the clock. But does it matter when the clock is reset?
You mean what time
well,
of day?
They were saying, say like in a normal world, before civilization and all that kind of thing, we would wake up in the morning and the sun would be coming up. And so we would see the sun and that would reset the clock. But if we have artificial light, we're seeing light all through the day. For that matter, the sun, is up all through the day. At what time does this reset occur?
So the reset, that's a really scientific question. From what I've learned from the scientists who've done these studies, the time of day that you want that light passing through your eyes at dusk and dawn.
Is it what?
Dusk. And dawn.
And
dusk and dawn.
Okay. You also said that a little while ago. You also said that people who are totally blind can also get this reset. So, are those people who have some? I mean, they open their eyes and they can see maybe a gray haze or something like that. Or these people who they themselves don't perceive any light, but somehow light passes through the retina into the appropriate spot and resets it.
Correct. That is correct.
Aha. Okay.
It's two different pathways. I think people get confused. They think, if I see the light, then I have light perception. Or if I don't see the light, I don't have light perception. That's not always the case.
Okay. Is there anyone else that I did not call that's on this chat right now? Anybody else that I did not call that came in late?
If there's not.
All right. Well, Karen, excuse me. I thought I heard somebody. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, if there's not anybody else, I do have one more thing that I want to ask about.
Go right ahead.
Oh. I don't. Well, I've talked with. There's a lady. I don't remember her name. Jessica, just something like that. It calls about every 3 to 6 months to ask if I've gotten 924 yet. But my problem is I don't have a lot of trouble going to sleep, but I have a problem with it staying asleep. I'll sleep about 2.5 to 3 hours and I'll wake up. But most of the time I'll go back to sleep. But this doesn't seem to have anything to do with non-24. Do you know of any?
If you fall asleep at the same time every day and you kind of wake up around the same time every day, even if it is 2 to 3 hours after you have fallen asleep, that's insomnia. That's not non-24.
I didn't have a chance to really finish my question to Karen because I was the first one.
Hey, after Joni, we're going to wrap it up. We're about an hour and 15 minutes. Go ahead, Joni.
Karen, I started to talk with you about the side effects for older people of taking the drugs that Vanda sells. Has anything been done about that? Because my doctor said that you could get your liver could be affected. Now I forget what the different things were, but I'm 77, and my doctor strongly said don't take it.
Now, it could be because of your own personal medical history. Because
I knew someone else that was told the same thing and that was on it, and finally had to go off it because she was having such bad effects.
So, from what I understand, because I don't sell the drug. I just talk about non-24. From my understanding, with the medication that is used for non-24, there is a side effect where you could have what we call liver enzyme elevation. But keeping in mind that liver enzyme elevation can happen if you take Tylenol. And actually that's one of the biggest causes of liver enzyme elevation is Tylenol. And so it's from what I remember learning about the medications, the side effects were not that huge. Though I would say the biggest side effect or the most impressive side effect that you would see was a liver enzyme elevation, and it was a small number of people.
And one more quick question. Will insurance pay for this?
Yeah, insurance covers it. Insurance covers it. It's expensive, I'm not going to lie. It costs a lot of money. But insurance covers it. This is what happens. I'll be truthful. What happens is the company says, this is how much it is. Let's throw out a figure. Somebody throw out a figure. Let's say it's $5,000, let's say, okay? For a month, let's say. And that's not, and I don't know the cost, to be truthful. I don't know. I'm just throwing out a number. What the company does is, so the insurance company will say, you know what? We're not going to give you $5,000 for that pill. We're going to give you $2,000. And the company says, okay, we'll take it. And if the insurance company says, okay, your copay is going to be $1,000, the company will say, no, we'll cover that copay. You're not going to have that copay. So that's what's happening. So I think the highest copay I heard of, because I don't work with patients once they go on that particular product, the highest copay I've heard of was something like $20 a month. That was the highest. So yes, insurance covers it. Depends on the insurance. Depends on your insurance. Now, I don't want to say everybody's insurance is going to cover it, because not everybody's. I mean, my insurance didn't cover my eye drops that I had to get the other day. So everybody's a little bit different. But for the most part, I've heard of really reasonable coverage. But it's a talk to have with your physician again, to be honest, because they really, the side effect profile, from my understanding, is not that impressive, meaning that it's a pretty benign medication, but there is a risk of liver enzyme elevation. But I always say to people, if you take a Tylenol, if I took Tylenol tonight before I went to bed, which I do because I have a bad neck, and I had my blood drawn tomorrow, the doctor would ask me, were you drinking alcohol? Because your liver enzymes are a little elevated. So everybody's a little bit different.
Do you have numbers on that, though? It's not that important. It's like, can you cite those studies? I mean, I hate to sound like a geek, but
I can't. I can't. But you can go online and look them up. They're all public. Yeah.
Well, thank you very
much. Could you give out your information one more time before we wrap up this evening?
Sure. I'm going to give you my personal my cell phone, so you can call if you want, and I'm also going to give you my email, so you can email me if you'd like. And please do so. If you email me, there's a lot of stuff I won't be able to email back, so you may want to pick up the phone and call. So my number is 202-699-1324. Again, that's 202.
And that's the Washington, D.C. exchange.
It is. And I live in Massachusetts. 699-1324. The company is based out of D.C., so they gave me a D.C. number. And then my email is Karen dot, so Karen dot, Orband, and I'll spell that. It's O-R, B as in boy, A, N as in Nancy, D as in David, Karen dot Orband, at Vanda, V-A-N-D-A, Pharma, P-H-A-R-M-A, .com. Karen.Orband at vandapharma.com.
Very good. Karen, this has been a terrific show. You've really enlightened a lot of people with your knowledge, and hopefully people will, look into this further if they feel that they have non-24 or have loved ones who they might think have it. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me. It was my pleasure, and I hope everybody does well and gets a good night's sleep tonight.
There you go.
Everybody asked very good questions tonight.
Thank you so much.
Take care, everyone. God bless you.
Bye-bye.
Night.